the big disclosure coming up. The big disclosure. It is sensational details from the Rhea digital data dump. Let me take across to the sensational details that we are talking about, and this is exactly what the Enforcement Directorate has been questioning Rhea Chakraborty about. Sensational details of Rhea's digital data dump that the Enforcement Directorate has with it. Stunning call records day after Rhea dumped Sushant. 8th of June, remember, ladies and gentlemen, Rhea had walked out of Sushant's house and she had blocked his calls. And between the 8th and the 13th, it is the 8th of June and 13th of June that the calls between Rhea and Mahesh Bhatt have increased many-fold. This is the information that we've got from our sources in the Enforcement Directorate. Many-fold increase in the calls between Rhea and Mahesh Bhatt. Rhea has been grilled on her conversations with Mahesh Bhatt. In fact, there are some call records, some data, some WhatsApp chats that were deleted. The backup of these deleted data have also been recovered by the Enforcement Directorate. Why were those messages deleted? Did they have something? Those are the questions that the Enforcement Directorate is asking Rhea. Between June 8th and 13th, what was so crucial between Rhea and Mahesh Bhatt that they had so many calls? We showed you January, they were talking on a normal line. 3rd of February is when those calls ended, and then these calls increasing many-fold. And this 3rd of February was the last time. Did they move to encrypted calling mechanisms after that period? And why was Rhea talking so many times to Mahesh Bhatt is part of the questionnaire that has been put to Rhea Chakraborty for answers. So there are 4 things that came out very clearly in the questioning, and the questioning did include that Rhea was controlling the finances of Sushant Singh Rajput. Rhea was in touch with all people and all the people in Sushant's house, and the fact that the finances, the companies were all being handled by Rhea. What did Rhea tell Mahesh Bhatt is the puzzle that is being solved and being looked at by the Enforcement Directorate very, very, very closely. Did Rhea talk to Mahesh Bhatt about Sushant Singh Rajput? Why call Mahesh Bhatt after the breakup with Sushant Singh Rajput? What does Mahesh Bhatt know? Has he given that statement? Because he went to the Mumbai police on the 27th of July. Has he said anything? Will Mahesh Bhatt come clean? That is the big question. Mahesh Bhatt may know something that so far hasn't come out into the public domain. It seems, why is Mahesh Bhatt conspicuously silent is a question that we are asking, ladies and gentlemen. Sensational new angle that comes up in the Rhea case. I am going across to my colleague Padmaja Joshi. And Padmaja, the Mahesh Bhatt question. Calls from January go up to 3rd of February and then silent, because those are not the calls which show up in your data request. So the question that ED has asked Rhea Chakraborty is, did they move to encrypted calls? And then a many-fold increase in talks between Rhea and Mahesh Bhatt between the 8th and the 13th of June. What was going on? And Mahesh Bhatt has taken a position about Rhea Chakraborty in public.
That is correct. And if you just take a look at these calls more closely, there were 16 calls in less than a month. The call data record that we have accessed between the 12th of January and the 3rd of February, and in these 16 calls, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 calls which were outgoing, and the rest were incoming. So that is as far as the communication between the two is concerned. Why is the date of 8th very significant? Because that is the date when Rhea Chakraborty apparently left Sushant's house, and it is also the date on which Disha Salyan committed suicide. So after that, according to what sources have told us, the number of calls, the communication between the two went up many-fold. But Mr. Bhatt himself, in the meantime, has been completely cryptic when it comes to any public pronouncements. In all of these days, In all of these days, going to be close to 2 months since the suicide or since the death of Sushant Singh Rajput, there's been only one public communication by Mahesh Bhatt. It was this extremely cryptic tweet which came from him, and this came at the end of July. दुनिया के बनाए रास्तों में उलझने कम ना थी और जब चला खुद बना के रास्ते तो दुनिया उलझ गई. That's all he has said. No explanation, no context. One is, it is open to interpretation, but this pretty much is the only thing he has said. And the second thing which he said was, I've come a long way. Where? I just don't know where. So it's just these two very, very cryptic, open-ended tweets that have come from Mahesh Bhatt. It's strange because we know that the person who is under a lot of scrutiny at this point had been regularly communicating with him before the 8th of July and afterwards even more frequently. Back to you, Narika.
Well, let me also ask you, Padmaja, because one of the tweets that Mahesh Bhatt has put out, there is a picture that he's put, and those are crisscrossing railway lines. Was he talking about, it could be anything under the sun, but the fact that there is a background information that we have, that there were calls that were going on. Did he know something? Was Rhea Chakraborty discussing her issues with Sushant Singh Rajput, with Mahesh Bhatt? Was he just a director? The fact that there were so many calls between them, doesn't that raise a few questions?
It does also because 2 years ago, actually, Rhea Chakraborty had come in for a lot of, public scrutiny. There were pictures of her and Mahesh Bhatt. Incidentally, also, it's around the time when she started working on a Vishesh Films movie, Jalebi. That's a film that she did with the production house of Mr. Bhatt. And it's around that time that a few pictures of them came out and that there was a lot of social media backlash. Rhea at that time had hit out at all the trolls. Subsequently, she had also, this year, apparently on Mr. Bhatt's birthday, wished him, and that was in the month of July. Strangely, that tweet was later, it was in June, pardon me, 19th of June 2020. This was after Sushant's suicide that Rhea put out this tweet, and strangely, she eventually went back and deleted it. Now, what is very strange in all of this, and what the family is also questioning at this point, and of course the ED is going to be questioning Rhea Chakraborty about the calls that have been made between her and Mr. Bhatt. But the one thing that remains really curious in all of this is the complete silence from Mahesh Bhatt himself. If we can call these two tweets a statement, but they don't really indicate anything. It's such a raging controversy. He's right in the middle of it. But these two tweets is the only thing that's come from him.
But 19th of June, putting out a tweet wishing Mahesh Bhatt, saying, I love you, and 5 days after Sushant Singh Rajput's body was found. Well, maybe you just wish, friends. You put out tweets, but then why delete it? Questions that Rhea Chakraborty doesn't want media to ask, and that's her plea in the Supreme Court where the case is coming up tomorrow. But why does she not want the media to ask these questions? Because 1 month ago, Rhea Chakraborty wanted a CBI inquiry. Today, she's fighting for no CBI inquiry. Clearly, many questions that are not adding up, which is why the legitimate question on the News Hour tonight is just one. Should Rhea Chakraborty just drop her victim card and answer these questions? Because clearly she was the closest to Sushant Singh Rajput in his last days. What does she know and is not talking about is the question India wants to know.